China has landscapes that look less like geography and more like something the Earth created by mistake. A coastline turns crimson. Thousands of stone pillars rise above the clouds. A road disappears into the body of a mountain. Two temples balance above an abyss. A glacier descends toward a living forest. And in the middle of a desert, a crescent-shaped lake refuses to vanish. None of this is legend. None of it is illusion. Every place is real. Across China, nature and human ambition have created landscapes that seem to challenge the rules of color, gravity, survival, and time. This is a journey beyond the familiar map, into places that should not exist. We begin in northeastern China, where the coast does not turn blue or green, but red. Near the city of Panjin, vast wetlands stretch toward the Bohai Sea. For much of the year, the landscape appears quiet and ordinary. Mudflats, shallow water, long channels shaped by the tide. But as the seasons change, the ground begins to transform. A salt-tolerant plant called Sueta salsa spreads across the wetlands. It begins in shades of green, then slowly darkens. By late summer and autumn, entire sections of the coast become crimson. From above, the wetland looks as if someone has poured red paint across the edge of the sea. Rivers and tidal channels cut through the color like dark veins. Narrow boardwalks cross the marsh, and flocks of birds move above a landscape that seems to belong to another planet. But this is not red sand. It is not colored water, and it is not a trick of the light. The red comes from life itself. Sueta salsa survives where many plants cannot. Its roots endure salty soil, changing tides, and conditions that would destroy ordinary vegetation. The harsher the environment becomes, the more extraordinary the landscape appears. Yet Panjin is not only a spectacle of color. These wetlands form part of an important coastal ecosystem. They provide feeding and resting grounds for migratory birds traveling across East Asia. Among them are rare species that depend on these shrinking coastal habitats to survive. So the Red Beach is not a frozen landscape. It breathes. It changes with the seasons. It expands and contracts with the water. And its famous color exists only because countless plants continue to survive between land and sea. What appears from the air to be a red wilderness is, in reality, a fragile living system. A place shaped by salt, by tide, by migration, and by the ability of life to adapt where survival seems almost impossible. But farther inland, the color disappears. The wetland gives way to mountains. And there, stone rises so high into the clouds that the ground itself begins to vanish. In the mountains of Hunan, the landscape rises into a world of stone. More than 3,000 narrow pillars and peaks emerge from deep valleys. Many climb hundreds of meters above the forest floor. Some are broad enough to support entire groves of trees. Others are so thin that they appear incapable of carrying their own weight. When the sky is clear, their scale is overwhelming. But when mist enters the valleys, the landscape changes completely. The bases of the pillars disappear. Forests detach from the ground, and mountains that have stood for millions of years begin to look as though they are floating. This is Guoliang Yuan, the vast natural landscape surrounding Zhangjiajie. From a distance, it resembles a city of towers. But no architect designed it. No builders raised these columns. and no single disaster created them. They are the remains of a much larger body of rock, slowly broken apart by water, weather, gravity, and time. The story began with layers of sandstone deposited in an ancient environment long before human beings existed. Over immense periods, the rock hardened. The land was lifted. Cracks formed across the surface. Rainwater entered those fractures. Streams cut deeper into the valleys. Temperature changes weakened the exposed stone. Plants took root inside the openings, their roots widening cracks that had already begun to form. The softer sections collapsed. The stronger sections remained. And as the surrounding rock disappeared, isolated towers were left standing. What we see today is not a mountain range built upward. It is a landscape carved downward, until only its strongest fragments survived. That may be why Zhangjiajie feels so unnatural. The pillars do not resemble ordinary mountains. They are too narrow, too numerous, too vertical. They rise beside one another like the ruins of an impossible civilization. Yet every wall, ridge, and column is the product of natural forces working at a scale almost impossible for the human mind to imagine. A single storm changes very little. A single winter leaves almost no visible mark. But repeated over millions of years, small changes become architecture. Water becomes a sculptor. Gravity becomes an engineer. And time becomes the greatest construction force on Earth. Life followed the changing stone. Trees rooted themselves on ledges hundreds of meters above the valleys. Shrubs emerged from nearly vertical walls. Moss spread across shaded surfaces where sunlight rarely reached. From below, the forest appears to climb the pillars. From above, vegetation covers their summits like small islands suspended in the air. The deeper valleys remain cool and dark. Streams move between walls so high that parts of the ground receive only brief periods of sunlight. Fog gathers after rain. Clouds drift through the gaps. For a few moments, a peak appears clearly. Then the mist closes around it, and the mountain vanishes again. This constant movement between visibility and concealment gives the landscape its strange power. Zhangjiajie never reveals itself all at once. The weather decides what can be seen. A clear morning exposes the enormous scale of the stone forest. A wet afternoon hides the valleys and leaves only the highest pillars above the cloud. The landscape does not change its shape, but it changes its identity. At one moment, it is solid and geological. At another, it becomes dreamlike, a world with no visible connection to the ground. This appearance later helped inspire the floating mountain landscapes associated with the film Avatar. For many international visitors, that connection became the first reason they recognized Zhangjiajie. But the comparison can also make the real place seem smaller than it is. The cinema imagined mountains floating in another world. Zhangjiajie creates the illusion here. Without machines, without digital effects, and without leaving Earth. Yet the most extraordinary experience is not simply seeing the pillars from a viewpoint. It is moving through them. Paths climb along the edges of cliffs. Cable cars cross open valleys. Elevators rise beside vertical rock walls. Bridges connect one section of the mountain to another. At some viewpoints, visitors stand above the clouds. At others, they descend into ravines where the peaks disappear overhead. The same landscape can feel vast and open from the summit, then narrow and enclosed from the valley floor. Distance becomes difficult to judge. A pillar that appears close may be separated by a ravine hundreds of meters deep. A path visible across the valley may require a long descent and another climb to reach. The landscape confuses not because it lacks order, but because its scale is larger than ordinary perception. The human eye sees columns. The body encounters cliffs. The map shows short distances. The mountain demands hours. And everywhere, stone controls the direction of movement. But despite its beauty, Zhangjiajie is not a gentle landscape. The same erosion that created the pillars continues today. Rock faces crack. Fragments break away. Water cuts deeper into the valleys. Roots weaken stone as they search for space. The formations appear permanent only because human lives are so brief beside them. On a geological timescale, the pillars are temporary. They are surviving remnants, standing between the mountain they once belonged to and the collapse that will eventually destroy them. This gives Zhangjiajie a quiet sense of tension. The towers appear strong enough to last forever, but their existence depends on a balance that is constantly changing. They survive because erosion has not yet finished its work. The mist makes them appear weightless, but gravity has never stopped pulling. The forest makes them appear alive, but every tree sends its roots deeper into the fractures. What looks like stillness is actually a landscape in slow motion. Stone is separating. Valleys are deepening, and the mountains are continuing to become more isolated from one another. At Panjin, life transformed the color of the coast. Here, time transforms solid rock into a forest of towers. One landscape survives through constant renewal. The other exists through constant loss. And yet both appear impossible for the same reason. We arrive too late to witness their creation, and too early to witness their end. But not every mountain in China was shaped only by water and time. Farther north, in the Taihang Mountains, a wall of rock separated a village from the outside world. For generations, the mountain decided who could enter and who could leave. Then 13 villagers made a decision. If nature would not give them a road, they would carve one themselves. High in the Taihang Mountains, the village of Guoliang once stood almost completely separated from the world below. Sheer cliffs surrounded it. The land dropped away on nearly every side. And for generations, the only route in or out was a narrow path cut along the mountain. A steep chain of stone steps clinging to the rock. Everything had to travel along that path. Food, tools, livestock, building materials, the elderly, the injured, and anyone who became seriously ill. There was no road. No vehicle could reach the village. No ambulance could climb the cliff. A journey that appeared short on a map could become hours of dangerous descent. For the people of Guoliang, isolation was not a poetic idea. It shaped every part of daily life. A heavy object could require several people to carry. A medical emergency could become a race against the mountain. Children leaving to study had to descend the same exposed route. Farmers bringing goods to market faced the cliff before they ever reached the outside world. The village could see the valleys below, but reaching them was another matter. The mountain was not merely part of the landscape. It was a wall. Then, in 1972, 13 villagers decided that waiting was no longer enough. They did not have modern drilling machines. They did not have professional tunnel building equipment, and most had no formal engineering training. What they had were hammers, steel chisels, ropes, simple tools, and the belief that the mountain could be opened one strike at a time. They began cutting directly into the cliff. At first, progress was almost invisible. A hammer struck stone. A chisel entered only a few centimeters. Broken fragments were carried away. Then the process began again. And again. And again. The work was slow because every meter had to be earned. The villagers could not simply destroy the rock in front of them. They had to create a passage wide enough for movement, while leaving enough of the mountain intact to prevent collapse. They worked inside darkness. They worked beside exposed drops. They worked through dust, falling fragments, cold winters, and exhausting summers. Every blow created only a small mark, but thousands of blows became a hollow. Thousands more became a corridor, and the corridor gradually became a road. As the tunnel moved deeper into the mountain, the workers cut openings through the outer wall. These openings allowed daylight and air to enter. They also gave the workers places to remove broken rock. But they created something visually extraordinary. From inside the tunnel, each opening frames a fragment of the valley. A sudden rectangle of sky. A cliff on the opposite side. A glimpse of the road suspended above the abyss. Some openings are narrow. Others are wide and irregular. None appear perfectly measured. Together, they make the tunnel look unfinished, as though the mountain has been torn open rather than carefully constructed. But the roughness is part of its truth. The walls still carry the marks of hand tools. The stone remains uneven. The ceiling changes height. The road bends around the natural resistance of the mountain. This was not a tunnel designed for elegance. It was designed for escape from isolation. For 5 years, the work continued. More villagers joined. The passage extended meter by meter through the cliff. By the time it was completed, the tunnel stretched for approximately 1.25 kilometers. For the first time, vehicles could reach Guoliang. The village had not moved closer to the outside world. The mountain had been forced to make room. Today, the Guoliang Tunnel is often described as one of the most dangerous or dramatic roads in China. Visitors arrive to photograph its rough windows, narrow bends, and exposed cliffside sections. From the outside, it can look like a feat created for spectacle. But the road was never intended to become a tourist attraction. It was not carved for adventure. It was not built to test courage. It was built because ordinary life had become too difficult without it. That difference matters. Many extreme roads are built to cross difficult terrain as efficiently as possible. Guoliang was built by people who lived at the end of the route. The builders were not passing through the mountain. They were trying to connect their homes to everything beyond it. The tunnel changed more than transportation. Goods could move more easily. Visitors could arrive. Children could travel further for education. Medical access improved. The village entered a world that had previously remained visible, but unreachable. Yet access also brought transformation. A place once defined by isolation became known for the road that ended it. Tourism followed. The tunnel that connected Guoliang to the outside world also brought the outside world into Guoliang. This is the paradox of remote places. The road that saves them from isolation can also change the very thing that made them unique. Before the tunnel, the mountain controlled movement. After the tunnel, movement began to reshape the village. But the road remains a monument to a particular kind of determination. Not the power of a government megaproject. Not the precision of advanced machinery. But the persistence of ordinary people facing a physical barrier that had controlled their lives for generations. The tunnel is impressive because of its size, but it is unforgettable because of its origin. 13 people looked at a wall of stone and treated it as a problem that could be solved. Not quickly, not safely, and not without sacrifice. But gradually, one strike at a time. Standing inside the tunnel today, it is possible to see both the mountain and the effort required to overcome it. The cliff remains massive. The valley remains deep. The road remains narrow. Nature has not become smaller. The people simply created a path through it. At Zhangjiajie, erosion separated mountains over millions of years. At Guoliang, human hands entered a mountain within a single generation. One landscape was shaped by forces too slow to observe. The other was changed by repeated acts so small that each one seemed almost meaningless. A single hammer strike could not defeat a cliff. But no tunnel begins as a tunnel. It begins as a mark in stone. Then another. Then another. Until the impossible becomes wide enough to pass through. Yet not every mountain was opened in order to leave it. Farther south, people climbed toward another summit for the opposite reason. They were not searching for a road out. They were searching for a place above the ordinary world. In Guizhou, a narrow pillar of rock rises through forest and cloud. At its summit, the stone splits in two. A temple stands on each side. And between them, a small bridge crosses the void. In Guizhou province, the mountains rise through layers of forest and cloud. Most peaks spread outward as ridges, but one formation rises almost alone. A narrow column of stone lifting above the surrounding slopes. This is the red cloud's golden summit of Fanjingshan. From a distance, it appears less like a mountain and more like the remains of a tower. Its sides are nearly vertical, Vegetation clings to cracks in the rock. A staircase twists upward along the cliff. And at the summit, the stone is split into two separate peaks. A small Buddhist hall stands on each side. One is associated with Shakyamuni Buddha, the other with Maitreya. The Buddha believed in Buddhist tradition to belong to a future age. Between them, a narrow bridge crosses the fracture. Below it, there is only open air. From the valley, the buildings are almost impossible to see. They are too small against the mountain, too high above the forest. But as visitors climb closer, the scale of the place begins to reveal itself. The path narrows. The steps become steeper. Metal chains follow the rock, giving climbers something to hold as they pull themselves upward. In some sections, the staircase appears almost vertical. The mountain fills the entire field of vision. There is no distant horizon, only stone in front and emptiness behind. The climb does not simply lead to the temples. Oh, it changes the way the summit is experienced. Each step removes the visitor farther from the forest below. The air becomes cooler. Clouds move across the path. The valleys disappear, and the ordinary world gradually loses its shape. Then, near the top, the rock divides. The staircase enters the narrow fracture between the two halves of the summit. Walls rise on both sides. Light enters from above. For a moment, the climber is enclosed inside the mountain, before emerging onto the peak. There, the two halls face one another across the void. The bridge connecting them is short, but nothing about crossing it feels small. Wind moves across the summit without obstruction. Clouds rise through the gorge. The forest below may be visible for only a few seconds, before mist closes over them again. When the clouds are thick, the temples appear detached from the earth. There is no visible mountain beneath them, only two structures: a bridge and a white ocean moving below. Why build a sacred place here? Why carry materials up a summit where even standing can feel uncertain? Perhaps the difficulty was not an obstacle to worship. Perhaps it was part of it. Sacred mountains often represent distance from ordinary life. The climb separates the pilgrim from comfort. Every step requires attention. Every exposed section reminds the body of its vulnerability. And the higher the path rises, the less important the world below appears. Faith at Fanjingshan was not placed beside the mountain. It was placed at the point where the mountain almost disappears into the sky. The two halls also create a powerful contrast. Shakyamuni represents the Buddha of the present age. Maitreya represents a Buddha still to come. Between them lies a bridge, a narrow passage suspended between what exists now and what has not yet arrived. Whether the builders intended every visitor to read the summit this way is impossible to know. But the landscape makes symbolism unavoidable. The mountain is divided, yet connected. The temples are separated, yet face one another. The bridge is physically small, yet appears to cross an immeasurable space. From below, the summit looks permanent. But on the peak, everything feels fragile. Walls depend on a limited surface of stone. Stairways follow narrow ledges. Clouds conceal the depth of the cliffs. Wind, rain, freezing temperatures, and vegetation continue to act on the rock. The temples appear to command the landscape. In reality, they survive only because the mountain continues to hold them. But Fanjingshan is more than a dramatic pedestal for architecture. The wider mountain is geologically unusual. UNESCO describes it as an island of metamorphic rock surrounded by a vast region of karst. Its terrain rises from roughly 500 meters to 2,570 meters, producing major changes in climate, vegetation, and habitat over a relatively short horizontal distance. Lower slopes contain dense subtropical forests. Higher elevations support mixed mountain vegetation. Near the summit, trees become shorter and more twisted. Different environments are stacked vertically, almost like separate worlds arranged one above another. This isolation allowed forms of life to survive here that exist nowhere else. The mountain is the only natural habitat of the endangered Guoliang snub-nosed monkey and the Fanjingshan fir. UNESCO also identifies its forests as containing the largest continuous area of primary subtropical beech forest. The Guoliang snub-nosed monkey lives mostly beneath the famous summit, hidden inside the mountain forests. It is rarely part of the image seen in travel photographs. The temples dominate the skyline. The bridge captures attention. The rock formation becomes the symbol. But beneath that symbol lies an ecosystem whose survival depends on remaining difficult to reach. For these animals, isolation was not a prison. It was protection. The same mountain that made human access difficult also limited disturbance. Steep valleys divided habitats from surrounding development. Cloud, rain, and dense vegetation concealed life within the forest. While people climbed upward in search of the sacred, rare species survive below by remaining unseen. This creates two different stories on the same mountain. At the summit, human faith reaches toward the sky. Below it, ancient forests preserve life from another age. One depends on visibility. The other depends on concealment. One announces itself with temples placed above the clouds. The other survives quietly beneath them. Fanjingshan therefore feels impossible on more than one level. The summit appears too narrow for buildings. The bridge appears too exposed to cross. The forests appear too isolated to contain such biological richness. And the entire mountain seems to stand apart from the landscape surrounding it. But the feeling of impossibility comes from perspective. The temples were not placed there in defiance of gravity. They were positioned according to the shape of the rock. The forest did not survive by resisting isolation. It survived partly because of it. The mountain did not separate nature from human belief. It forced them into different layers of the same vertical world. At Guoliang, people entered a mountain to escape isolation. At Fanjingshan, they climbed into isolation deliberately. One road was created to reconnect a village with ordinary life. The other path leaves ordinary life behind. one step at a time. But farther west, there are mountains where neither forests nor temples soften the landscape. The clouds retreat. The vegetation disappears. And the ground itself is torn open into thousands of dark ridges. There, water did not create a sanctuary. It created a wound, cut deep into the dry earth. After the cloud-covered summit of Fanjingshan, our journey descends from the mountains and enters the desert. Far to the west, near the ancient city of Dunhuang, the forests disappear. The air becomes dry, the horizon opens, and at the foot of the enormous Mingsha sand dunes, a narrow curve of blue appears in the sand. This is Crescent Spring. Located about 6 kilometers south of Dunhuang in Gansu province, the lake lies inside a natural depression surrounded by towering dunes. From above, its shape is unmistakable. A thin body of water curves like a crescent moon, dark blue at the center, green along its shoreline, and surrounded almost completely by golden sand. There's no visible river flowing into it, no waterfall, no green valley carrying water across the desert. That is what makes the lake appear impossible. But Crescent Spring is not filled primarily by rainfall. Its water comes from an underground system connected to the wider Dunhuang Basin. Water originating from the Dongyi River system moves through layers of sand, gravel, and sediment beneath the surface. Because the spring lies at a lower elevation, groundwater reaches the surface and collects inside the depression, creating the lake we see today. The lake is therefore not a separate pool placed inside the desert. It is the visible part of a much larger water system hidden beneath it. This also explains why changes far beyond the dunes can affect the lake. When rivers carry less water into the basin, or when too much groundwater is pumped for farms and settlements, the underground water table falls and Crescent Spring begins to shrink. The second mystery is the sand. The surrounding dunes are not fixed mountains. Wind constantly moves individual grains across their slopes. Ridges change shape. Steep faces collapse. Footprints left during the day may disappear by morning. Yet the lake has remained visible beside these moving dunes for at least 2,000 years. Its survival depends partly on the shape of the basin and the movement of local winds. Air flows around the dunes, carrying much of the sand along their slopes, instead of depositing all of it directly into the lake. The spring has not survived because the desert stopped moving. It survives because water, wind, sand, and terrain have remained in a delicate balance. For travelers on the ancient Silk Road, Crescent Spring was more than a natural wonder. Dunhuang was an important oasis and resting point for merchants and pilgrims traveling between China and Central Asia. After days of crossing dry land, the sight of water meant shade, rest, water for animals, and the possibility of continuing the journey. In a desert, a spring was not simply beautiful. It could determine who reached the next destination. But during the 20th century, Crescent Spring began to decline. Population and agriculture expanded around the Dunhuang Oasis. More groundwater was extracted. The underground water table fell. The lake became shallower, and its famous crescent grew smaller. The greatest threat was not that the dunes would suddenly bury the lake. It was that the water could disappear from below. In 2011, a broader water protection and ecological restoration plan was introduced for Dunhuang. Groundwater replenishment became an important part of the effort to protect Crescent Spring. The recovery was gradual, but the lake's water level eventually began to rise again. Its existence today is therefore both natural and protected. Nature created the basin, the dunes, and the underground water system. But human management now helps prevent excessive water use from destroying the balance. Standing on the highest dune, the entire lake can be seen at once. It is not a great river cutting through the desert. It is not a vast inland sea. It is a small crescent of water, surrounded by forces much larger than itself. Groundwater feeds it from below. Wind moves the sand around it. Human decisions influence how much water remains. And together, those forces explain why Crescent Spring is still here. As the sun falls, the golden dunes turn orange. Footprints begin to fade beneath the wind. The desert slowly loses its shape in the darkness. But below, the crescent remains blue. Of all the impossible places we have crossed, which one would you choose to see with your own eyes, and why? Tell us in the comments, because your answer may decide where our next journey begins. As Crescent Spring fades into the desert night, remember that even the most impossible landscapes survive only when the forces around them remain in balance. And somewhere beyond the next mountain, behind another wall of cloud, or beneath Enthir's silent desert, a new impossible place is still waiting to be discovered.